Melissa just to let her know so she can start the recording.
All right. Who wants to do the pledge?
Go ahead, Kim. You can have
Peter.
it.
Peter's going to do it.
Oh, okay.
I saw okay. So
Hold
Cecilia,
on. I'm sorry. Just let me hit record. Hold on.
that's okay. Take your time.
She's starting the planning board.
Busy tonight.
Okay.
We can hear everything in your room, Cecilia.
Yep. I'm shutting it off.
Feedback City.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Philipstown Planning Board meeting for December 16th. Peter Lewis will lead us in the pledge. We could all stand as soon as Cecilia puts the flag up.
I pledge allegiance
To the
flag
flag
of
United
the
States
United
States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
For all.
Okay. So, I guess, Cheryl, if you could take the roll
Sure. Kim Connor,
here.
Dennis Gagnon, Peter Lewis,
Here.
Laura O'Connell,
Here,
Neil Toman,
Here.
Heidi Wendell,
Here.
Neil Zuckerman.
Neil Zuckerman will be here shortly.
Okay.
So the first thing is the approval for minutes from the October meeting. Anyone like to anybody have any comments, any corrections? No? Okay. In that case, if someone would like to make a motion to approve the minutes. Peter, second.
Second.
Laura and Neil. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. So the first thing on our agenda tonight is the Sandlawn and Wensky residential site plan at 825 Route 9D in Garrison. Town map number or tax map number 71.-1-13.111. This is a minor project, development of a new single-family dwelling, accessory building, and in-ground swimming pool to be served by a new septic system and water well and related site improvements.
I think Jason has to be let in.
Okay, one second.
So we're just waiting for
Yeah.
Jason Snyder. So I guess we'll have the Glenn and Jason, do you want to present the project?
Actually, I believe
If you could let up, there he is.
this is John Savon. I'll be presenting for this evening, and Jason will chime in.
Okay.
And I'm an architect, and I'm also the applicant for this submission. So I'd just like to start by thanking the board for your time and consideration tonight. Our focus is going to be to share a very preliminary high-level concept for this site. There's a number of unique qualities about the property that we want to highlight. And I'm going to be sharing my screen in just a moment with the documents that I believe each of you has already received. So let me know when this is visible.
Good.
Okay, we can see it.
Very good. So to provide a very high-level overview, this is a 20-acre parcel that is just west of Route 9D. It's basically the parcel just north of Laws Lane and south of the Town Recreation Center. And it extends from 9D to the river. We purchased this property from SI, and there is a conservation easement on the property, which also includes a trail easement, public access trail easement on the west side of the property. I'll go into a little bit more detail when we bring up the plans. So our proposal is for a single family residence, single story, approximately 3,600 square feet. There will be a detached garage, roughly 900 square feet for the garage, also including a 200 square foot wood shop, and also an accessory unit. So in addition to the dwellings, there will be a pool with a terrace paver area and a small cabana / storage barn for the seasonal use of furniture and storage during the winter time. So as part of the agreement with OSI, there's a designated building envelope area, and the proposed location of all of the buildings complies with the agreement that we have in place with OSI. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in just a second. So this is a site plan. What you see outlined in red are the extents of the parcel. So to orient you, just here to the south is Laws Lane. The existing residences are indicated here in the shading. Obviously 9D here on the west, on the east, and then the recreation center is here to the north. So some of you who may be familiar with the Fish Mansion, that property is indicated with a poche in this location. So what's interesting about the property, the entry point from 9D, this upper portion, there seems to be a bit of feedback, I'm sorry. The upper portion is relatively level in terms of grade, and for all intents and purposes, that's about 5 acres of the property. There's a very, very steep drop off of the property, approximately 40 to 50 feet, that occurs just west of this blue trapezoid. The trapezoid represents the agreement that we have in place with OSI, and we refer to this as the building envelope area. And so our improvements to the site in terms of the structures will be located within that trapezoid. And what you see indicated here with a red bubble, that's a little bit more detailed focus on where the buildings will be sited. Staying at a very, very high level, the public access trails through the easement with OSI enter the property at this location, just behind the Fish Mansion. And they basically extend along the waterfront to the tail end of the property. They loop back up to the midpoint of the property, and the public access trails exit again and go up a roadway towards the recreation center. But again, the point of elevation of the trails here in this location is approximately 40 to 50 feet below the elevation of the site for the structures. There's one other item of note that I'd like to highlight, and that is Arnold's Flight. So the historic pathway enters the property here, just off of 9D. It runs along the edge of the property and then across the northern edge, and then continues on down to the river. So this area of the trails is ungroomed and basically wild at this point in time, but it is of note. There are other, there's a pond and other water sources on the upper edge of the property, off of our property, just to the north, again, at an elevation approximately 40 to 50 feet below the proposed building site. I'll continue a little bit further to give you more detail. This is a topographic survey. I understand this is a little bit hard to read, but this indicates a little bit more clearly the drop-off that I'm mentioning in this area here. And you see that once the grade changes approximately 40 to 50 feet down, it gradually slopes back up towards the riverway. So what you see indicated here in the green are the improvements in terms of the structures. The larger rectangle in this location is the residence, approximately 3,600 square feet. There is a detached garage in this location. The garage includes approximately 900 square foot, plus a 200 square foot workshop for my tools. And then in the back, there is an accessory unit. That unit would be under 800 square feet. What you see dotted in this area, just behind the house, is the pool area. The dotted line indicates the extent of pavers that we have planned. And again, a small cabana for storage of seasonal furniture during the winter. So a few other highlights that I'd like to just mention. The setback from 9D will be approximately 400 feet to the house. And we do have intention of site improvements, whether that be fencing or other greenery, to be respectful of the scenic overlay and also the privacy from the neighboring properties. So with the conservation easement that's in place by OSI, we have every intention of honoring the conservation of this land. Our intention is only to remove trees in the primary construction site for the buildings. Outside of that 10-foot envelope of the construction site with the buildings, there's also obviously the wells, the septic, and the driveway that would connect to 9D. I do want to emphasize that although there is an existing well elsewhere on the site, it's located at the lower portion down at the bottom of the trails at that 50-foot drop-off. We have no intention of tapping into that existing well. There will be a new well, a new septic system installed for this residence. And then finally, the driveway access is pending confirmation by the DOT. I just wanted to provide an update that we have submitted that application to the DOT, and we're just waiting to hear back. We've also completed the soil testing, and we also completed earlier this week a tree survey, and that documentation is just being wrapped up and it will be available for your review in a very short while. I'll stop there for just a minute. Is there any questions about what I've started to present so far? Okay, I'll continue on. So just to orient you a bit to the site, 3 photographs. The first photograph is essentially standing at the front entryway to where the house would be located. So here you see a rather sharp edge of the drop-off of that 50 foot drop-off. You see the mature growth trees, and you see here, this is actually at the bottom of the drop-off at the public access trails looking back up. And what I want to note is that the construction of the house will not be at the edge of this cliff, if you will. It will be set back considerably so that the sight lines from the trail are being taken into account so as to minimize any sort of viewing of the structures. If we stand in the exact same spot of this photograph, and now we turn to the west, here you see the relatively flat grade of the public access trails that then gradually slope back up as you get closer to the river. So as a very high level point of reference, I want to just clarify again, this is a preliminary conceptual design package. So the details of the house are not yet sorted out, but I wanted to just share with the board tonight some inspirational references. This gives the flavor of the architecture that we will be creating on the site. So these are 6 different residences, but what they have in common is first and foremost, single-story construction, use of natural materials. Our palette will include wood, steel, stone, and glass. And what you see in each of these images is that the house is very much integrated within the landscape. And it's really our intention to celebrate, to enhance, to really respect the integrity of the site that's existing with minimal invasion. Getting a little bit more specific into the concept layout of the house itself, it is a 3-bedroom home, which also includes an open living space, a den/office, given that I work predominantly from home, especially in this day and time. Taking a bit of a step back, these are very preliminary elevations that show the front elevation of the home, which is, in terms of the massing and the punched openings, maintains a high degree of privacy and discretion from the street view. The back side of the house that faces the woods has a significantly more, a greater portion of glass to allow our view into the woods. And I think perhaps more of interest to the planning board, this is the way that the buildings and the siting of them will be pursued. Again, this is conceptual, and it is subject to some slight modifications on the site, pending the staking that we intend to be doing in the next 2 weeks. But here you see the relationship of the primary residence. Here is the 3-car garage. This would be my wood shop with the tools, the accessory unit in the back with the separate entrance. And of course, here then the pool with pavers and a small cabana. So I'll stop there and I'll be happy to field any questions that you may have.
Kim, you want to keep driving on?
All right, I couldn't find my mouse to unmute myself. So Neil, if you want to jump in, you're welcome to jump in.
No. If you keep driving. It's fine. Keep going.
All right.
I'll take over that.
So, I guess, first of all, does anybody have any questions on the board? Not really at this time, I imagine.
Well, I can't actually see all the structures on the screen I have open. I see the 3-car garage and the main house, and then something to the left in my screen, but I don't think
That's all. That's everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's helpful, I'll go back to the site plan so that you can see the greater context of what it is.
Cheryl, can you put up my screen? It might be a little bit more of what it has the slope analysis and everything on it.
I
Can I
believe
put up my screen?
John has to unshare and then you can share.
Okay. John, can we do that?
Yep, just took it down.
Okay. Are we in? Okay. So here's the steep embankment towards the back of the property, which John was referring to. Here's the well down here. We're not using that well. We're not going down this slope at all. The pond is back here and the buffer is shown. We're not really even close to that. We do have so this is kind of the arrangement of the driveway, of the proposed driveway preliminarily, and the structures and the septic, proposed septic preliminary and preliminary well location. We have the tree survey. I believe the field work was done today. We should have it mapped soon, and at that point we could then start to site these improvements to preserve as much vegetation and existing trees. There's a lot of locust trees and things out there, so we want to minimize the tree disturbance. So once we have that tree survey done, we will begin to fine tune the septic location and location of the house and driveway. So it's my goal. I mean, I guess it's one of the goals tonight to get to go through the seeker and the classifying the project scope but also to schedule a site visit so you can get a feeling of the site conditions, and then that will help John to put something together in terms of citing these improvements. If there's certain areas that you want preserved, we'll keep that in mind before we continue.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Jason, you've got the cutout on the property line. I see the one well you referenced towards the river, but there's another sort of jog in the property line that surrounds another well.
Correct. Yep.
And are any of those going to be recommissioned, or?
Those are active wells for the Glencliff property and the rec center property. So those are wells that are used for those properties. This was all one property at one point.
Oh, yeah.
So you're property. Yeah. So those wells are going to continue to be used for other purposes, although they're on this property. But we have a new proposed well, which we're going to have our own well.
So the one in the cutout is still servicing the rec center, and the other one is out of commission.
Well, I believe this one down at the bottom is serving the rec center. At the bottom of this cut, I mean, I believe this was mined at one point, and then this one in the cutout, I believe that goes to Glencliff. John, maybe you know a little bit more about where each one of those wells goes.
Yeah, I'm just curious why that wasn't made part of the other property.
Well, I guess because we needed the zoning. We needed to continue. We needed to continue on through here, so that's kind of like right in the middle, because they needed the 20 acres when this was subdivided, right? So, because it's the institutional conservation, I believe.
Okay, so you needed 20 acres.
Yeah. So and it's right in the middle. So there was really no way to. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't part of that subdivision process, so I'm not really sure what went on with that. But
right.
Those are to the other property. And we will obviously maintain the proper separation distances from the septic system.
And one more time, Jason, where do you see the well going in where you on the?
Well,
existing-
there's a high spot right here. There's a high spot to the kind of in between the septic and the road. So I would imagine that would be a good spot. I mean, it's kind of far away from the, maybe we need to move it around a little bit, but that's kind of like in the high spot. So, I mean, we might, depending on where the septic system for the garage goes, if we can squeeze it all in here, we might be able to move the well over to the north more. It might make sense to move it to the north more. So.
And that's all in front of the County Board of Health right now?
No, it's not. Well, we have all the soil testing is complete with the health department. They witnessed the testing. It's just a matter of, again, I could design something, but I want to make sure that we have the right house location and we have the tree plan. So, we don't have to, I don't want to go through the other things that we do on other projects. So I want to make sure that we have the tree plan first and then we design around that so we don't run into the typical problems. But it's all bank run. We can put a septic anywhere here. It's a 50 feet of bank run. So
yeah,
it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone?
I have one. Oh, Peter, go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. I guess the house itself, as I see it here on this map, is on a rise, and then to the west is that slope that you were talking about. Are you considering in your tree plan keeping trees along the top of that ridge or that that bench there to prevent any type of visual disturbance to the other side of the river or to other buildings that are to the north and south there?
So we do have intention of maintaining the existing trees on the edge, also being mindful of mitigating erosion given the steep drop off.
Right.
What I will say is that given that this front 5 acres is considerably set back from the river and that the site, once it drops off, does continue to ascend to the same 50-foot elevation before you get to the tracks.
Right.
There really
So you
is
got a
no
valley in there.
There really is no sight line from the river of this section of the property because it's so far set back.
Okay. And the other question I had was, isn't this really two houses? An accessory unit, doesn't that have to be attached, or is it the other way around if I get it backwards? I mean, this is really a living unit. It's got a bed in there and bathroom and everything.
So my understanding of the code is that the accessory unit is allowable if the garage itself is detached from the primary residence, and that accessory unit can be no more than 1/3 of the square footage of the primary residence and no more than 800 square feet. So we're well within compliance of all those code requirements.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you're way ahead of me there. That's great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Neil Zuckerman.
Yeah, thank you. So I was for a period of time the president of the Putnam County Historical Society, and one of the few markers that that society put up, and I don't know what year it was, on the roads, is for Benedict Arnold's flight. And it is unfortunately, I mean, historically, obviously, it's a disastrous time for the country, but it was and is one of the most important features of our community in many ways. It is also underknown, underinvested in, and as you said, overgrown, and frankly, not that navigable. But being a historian at heart, I care deeply for the preservation of history. So I will be concerned, and again, a site visit will be very important. I know you're not that, your driveway is much further south than where the marker is, but I am very concerned that marker looks like it's almost about to fall over, as it already is. So I just want to, when we do the site visit, I want to just note that I'm concerned that we don't have a historical review board like the village does, but I just am concerned about any disturbance to what is a pretty monumentally and fundamentally American location. Obviously, the Beverly Robinson house across the street is no longer looks anything like it did in the 18th century. So I just want to be mindful what we're doing in there. I don't have a specific thing because I haven't walked it in a long time, but you sound like a guy who's also respectful of history. Your design looks very Frank Lloyd Wrighty. No, and so I look forward to talking to you about that on the site visit and having your thoughts about how we preserve that history.
I appreciate those comments, and I do agree. So that marker is at that lower portion when you come down from the recreation center. I'm sure you're still familiar. So that marker is still intact. The information is actually part of what got us excited about this property. I will say that as an architect, I spent the beginning part of my career specialized in historic preservation. And I'm extremely mindful of conservation, both of historic structures, but also of properties. So I agree with all the points that you've just made, and I'll be happy to talk to you more about it when we do the walkthrough.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Any comments from the board? Okay. So in that case, I'd like to ask Ron to make his comments.
Okay, thank you. I think the applicant's done a very good job of describing where the property is and the concerns that relate to the proposed development of the tract. As has been touched on, I've already had preliminary discussions with the applicant's representatives, and they are moving forward with a tree plan. The site itself is heavily wooded, and I think the intent would be to try to save as much existing vegetation as is possible, given the development constraints. So that tree plan is in progress. The other significant issue to consider when you accomplish a sidewalk is just to recognize its visibility from public trails that's within the SPO. So that's a matter that you'll pick up as you accomplish the sidewalk itself. Administratively, there's a few things you want to accomplish tonight. One is to declare the project a minor project pursuant to your regulations. And again, based on seeker regulations, you can also classify it as a type 2 action, which will conclude your environmental review responsibilities. You might also wish to move forward with the necessary referrals. On Route 9D has to go to county planning. And then lastly, as has been touched on, you might desire to schedule a site walk at this opportunity.
I just want to just say that we should definitely have the tree plan prepared at the time of the site walk. So I think that'll be helpful.
Great. Great. Steve, is there anything you have to say here? Nothing?
No, I think that covers it very well.
Okay. So in that case, then I guess the first thing is to get a motion to declare this a minor project. Peter, second. Dennis, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion, any abstentions? Motion passes. The next thing is a type 2, correct? That we just said? Yeah, so to declare it a type 2 under seeker, I can get a motion for that. Neil Zuckerman, second. Peter, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Then next thing would be a referral to county planning. Motion for that to that effect. Neil Tillman, second. Peter, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Kim, if I could speak up for a second.
Sure.
You'd also desire to make a referral to town conservation, just given the steep slopes on the property, and referral just to DOT, just recognizing their permitting responsibility for the driveway access.
Okay, and what about the Garrison Fire Department?
That you could make if you wish. That's right.
Yeah.
That's not required, but often done.
Yeah, we usually do that. So I have to do those separately, correct? No, we can do them all at once?
I think you
Okay,
can do them
so
all.
if we could get a motion then to refer this to the Conservation Board, the Department of Transportation, and the Garrison Fire Department.
And county planning.
And county, we did county planning a minute ago.
I'll make that motion.
And Dennis first, Peter second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. So I think that covers all four, correct?
Yes.
Carol, is that what I said? Okay. So I guess the next thing would be to arrange a site walk. So we could pick dates. What do we think? January?
You're looking for a Sunday, January 2nd is right after New Year's, and then the 9th.
So when's our next meeting?
January 20th.
January 20th. So
Will we have the tree plan by that time?
by the 9th,
Yeah. And that's to Jason, I guess.
I'll have to, I mean, yeah, we should. Might be mad at me, but yeah, I think we can get it done by the 9th. I think we'll have it done by the 9th.
okay. So would anyone like to make a motion that we have the site visit on the 9th? Is there anyone who can't? I may not be able to do that, but I can figure it out. Neil? Peter? So Neil first, Peter second, all in favor? Aye.
Well, let me just say one proviso, John. If we have snow in the ground, we're not going to go traipsing into the woods in a few inches of snow. I just think we have to be mindful of that, and we'll call an audible that day.
Understood. I'll be happy to provide snowshoes, but if it's postponed, that's fine.
Okay. So, so we've approved the site walk January 9th, 9:30 a.m. And I think that concludes my responsibilities at this meeting, and I'm going to hand over to Mr. Zuckerman.
Great. Thank you very much, Kim. Good job. Thank you, John. Good evening.
All right.
All right, so we've got a busy remainder of the agenda. We're gonna get through. We have 2 public hearings, Paul Hemus, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call my own audible. We're probably gonna bring up the Garrison Golf Course before we do the Hudson Highlands Reserve. I haven't decided that yet, but I may do that because I think we have a narrow scope of business to attend to on the Garrison Golf Course and a wider range of conversation we have to have on the Hudson Highlands Reserve, and I don't want to get done with one and not the other, or at least start. So let's begin with our 2 public hearings. We have Arnold and Centillisis, please. Cheryl, you want to read the brief public hearing announcement and then let in our applicants, please?
The Planning Board of the Town of Philipstown, New York will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 16th, 2021, starting at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom to consider the following application. Arnold and Santalices, 5 Juniper Hill Road, Garrison, New York, 10524, tax map number 81.-1-11, minor project redevelopment of a residential property with a new single-family dwelling to be served by a new septic system and private well, construction of a detached 2-car garage and swimming pool. Dated at Philipstown, New York, this 18th day of November, 2021, Neil Zuckerman, Chair.
Okay.
All right, so Cheryl, do we have the applicant in here?
Just one moment.
I think you wanted me to take it over.
Okay. Jason, you're going to... So
Yeah.
Jason, let's just do the brief version of this, please.
Okay. Well, we're demoing the existing cottage and building a new single family residence. We're also decommissioning the existing septic system and well and building a new one. We're utilizing the existing, for the most part, the existing gravel driveway off of Juniper Hill Road. We have a Board of Health approval on the septic system and well. We have I'm not sure what Max's letter looks like, but the conservation board was good with the wetland mitigation plan that we had with the addition of a deer fence around the proposed shrubs in the area where the cesspit is being abandoned. They were happy with the development with respect to the steep slopes on the site. We've added some since you last saw the plan. We've added some improvements to the proposed effluent line. We provided a redundant effluent line so that if anything happens to the primary, we have another one. And we've also provided some. We'll encase that in K-Crete so that we can plant this new screening along the property line, which we've also incorporated into this plan, which should provide buffering to the Garrison Inn property to the south. We did switch the primary and reserve septic system so as to preserve this area, which is to the west of this house over here on Route 9. So we've buffered the property lines, and that's about it.
All right, good. So do we have anyone from the public here? Cheryl, that wants to speak?
I don't see any hands up, but if you'd like to speak, just raise your hand.
No one. I see an old friend of ours, Susan Jane Hill, on the list of attendees. It's a name from the past. Very excited to see you, Susan.
Yeah, no hands.
No hands. Susan. For those who don't know, Susan was with AKRF and worked with us earlier on Hudson Highlands Reserve. Anyone else going once? Going twice? Any member of the public? Going 3 times? All right. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Kim first, Peter second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Public hearing's closed. Okay, Ron, what's our next order of business related to St. Louis, please?
You've done all the other typical statutory requirements. You've classified it minor previously. You've declared it a type 2 action, concluding seeker. You've conducted your sidewalk. Now, with the close of the public hearing, you might wish to consider whether you want a resolution prepared for the next meeting.
The board members, any comments or questions at this point for the applicant or his advisors?
Just a quick one, Neil, thanks. Jason, I think you and Kim and I, when we did the sidewalk, we talked about the sweep of the driveway coming down, making that left turn into the property. I mean, it looks like you rectified that on the drawings, but is that? Just want to make sure. I mean, that was the only thing that stood out to me with this site plan. So have you gotten that figured out?
Well, we have not changed the alignment of the driveway at all. The conservation board was happy with the culvert, the existing culvert there, and the way it went over the stream. We haven't received any comments from the fire department with regard to that.
All right.
So, I mean, so to answer your question, no, we have not. I mean, we have not done anything with that.
All right. It's a little tight. That's all. That was, that was my only take on that.
Planning board meeting.
Oh, well, I don't want to hear you talking.
Well, is there, Jason, Mr. Santilsis, do you want to take this into account? If Neil and Kim have raised this topic a couple of times, they must have some reason why.
Well, from what I remember, we were only going to change it if it became an issue with the fire department or the conservation board. That, in my mind, that's how we left the
And
alignment.
have you heard from the fire department?
Did we refer this? Yeah, did we refer this to Garrison?
Yes, it was referred to Jim Erickson.
Okay, so, all right, so Jim didn't have an issue with it, so I'll go with that. That's fine.
I just have a question about the trees that are being planted on the border with the neighbor. You said they were being planted. Can you repeat what you said about what they were being planted in? Did you say Castcrete or something like that?
Oh, well, you had a concern with regard to the proximity of the new plantings to the sewer force main. So what we've done is we've proposed a redundant effluent sewer force main, and we've encased that trench in low density concrete so that the roots won't interfere with the piping.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just didn't know
So
what that was. So I just wanted to understand, what that was.
So that way we'll never have to, we have the redundant main, we'll never have to dig up that area again. I know that was a concern. So I think with this arrangement of redundant force mains, encasing it in K-Crete, that area will never have to be dug up again, and we'll never have a clearing between the two properties. That was the idea with that. So
okay. Can you just tell me about the trees? What are they?
We just proposed some Norway spruce. So they'll grow fast, and you'll have good screening from top to bottom. You're never going to have that missing growth once they get big. At the base, you'll always have the full, like a pine tree. You'll always have that full depth of screening. So we have those spaced every 16 feet on center.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other board members' questions? Okay. I'd like a motion to direct Ron to prepare the final resolutions, please. Thank you, Kim. First, any second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention. Okay, so we'll have that at our next meeting in January. Thank you, Mr. Santilsis.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call our second public hearing, Johnson and Rinderman. Cheryl, would you do the honors and let in the applicant and their representatives?
Okay, so this is me too. This is again, I'll make this.
Sorry, Neil, do you want me to read the notice?
Yeah, please go ahead, Cheryl.
The Planning Board of the Town of Philipstown, New York will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 16th, 2021, starting at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom to consider the following application. Johnson and Rinderman, Mountain Brook Drive, Cold Spring, New York, 10516. Tax map number 16.-1-34 and 56. Minor project, development of a new single-family dwelling to be served by a new septic system and private well and related site improvements. Dated at Philipstown, New York, this 18th day of November 2021. Neil Zuckerman, Chair.
Okay, Jason, highlights from Hamlet version, please.
Okay, so we have a single-family residence on a 12.25 acre parcel at the end of Mountain Brook Drive in the Rural Conservation Zoning District. The driveway is approximately, we're proposing a driveway of approximately 1,400 linear feet. We have again, a septic and well has been approved by the Putnam County Department of Health. Much of the driveway is in the proposed driveway is in the wetland buffer, which we are in front of the conservation board for that. We have and then we had so that's on that we have some work to do with some mitigation with regard to that. So we have now for the house site, we have this north wing and south wing connected by the lap pool, the elevated lap pool. This is on this Fishkill, I believe this is Fishkill Pond here. Again, we have Board of Health approval on the septic system and well. We do have going back to the front, we do have a detached garage at the end of the driveway near, am I sharing my screen or no? I'm sharing my screen, right?
Yeah, yes, you're sharing. You
Okay.
keep zooming in. You keep zooming in different places.
Okay.
But you're sharing.
Sorry about that. So we do have a detached garage, a small detached garage. It's well under the 1,000 square foot threshold for zoning. And so that's where we're at now. We have about 2 acres of disturbance. So we will be providing we will be filing a stormwater pollution prevention plan with the state for a general construction permit.
Okay.
So that's where we're at now.
Okay, thank you, Jason. All right, Cheryl, let's let in anyone who'd like to say anything. Any members of the public who can hear my voice, this is the time to speak. Anybody? Raise your hand virtually, send a text message. Anybody? Okay, Aaron, Mr. Sadler, why don't you come on and ask your question? I know tech, is there more to that than just to start a project? Jason, why don't you answer that question? Well, maybe Mr. Sadler joins us and shares his thoughts.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
For you, proposed start of project, I guess when we're all done here, but that was the gentleman's question.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
thank you, Neil.
Go ahead,
I mean,
Mr. Sadler, go ahead and speak, whatever you want to say.
Yes, my friend, just asking the proposed start of the project, you think?
as soon as we get all the permits, I mean, we want to get started as soon as possible because we got the bats restriction for the tree cutting starting April 1st. So ideally, we would get this started around March, the beginning of March, ideally. We need to get the conservation board, the wetland permit for this. I'm hoping to get that. Hopefully we can get that at the next meeting. But other than that, we won't, it needs to get going soon. So, I mean, I would say in March, we would get started with the rough cut of the driveway and the tree clearing.
Copy that, Jason. We'll come on down and say hello when you start.
All right, no problem.
All right, Mr. Sadler, thank you. Any other public speakers? Anyone else want to comment? Anybody recognize who may live nearby at an attendee tonight? I don't know a lot of the names here. Some of them I don't recognize. Last chance. Anyone else? Nope, I see someone just raised their hand.
Oh, okay, it's Mr. Dwyer. I'm going to move him over.
Yep. Mr. Dwyer, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just had to unmute. I guess my question was, it's pretty close to the reservoir. I assume there's been that's been looked at, right?
Yeah, well, the road is in the driveway is in the buffer. The idea is, the proposal is to use an existing the existing traveled way that leads up to the reservoir. So we're using an existing corridor to access the house site.
Yeah, I walk that area a lot. That's why.
Yeah.
I've met Mr. Johnson too, so I know the site. I just wanted to make sure someone had really looked at if there was going to be anything,
Oh yeah, so we do have a wetland mitigation plan proposed. That's Susan Janchill's. This is her mitigation plan. So we are proposing a wetland mitigation plan for the for this development near the pond. That is being looked at by the Conservation Board as we speak.
Okay.
Maybe Ron, you could just address the nature of the proximity of the pond to this development and how it fits.
Certainly, thank you. First should be recognized that the pond is no longer being used as a public water supply resource. And as has been touched on, Conservation Board is thoroughly involved in the project and processing an application with them. They've been out to the site. Planning Board has issued comments to the Conservation Board has issued comments to the Planning Board, and they've identified to the applicant some mitigation that they want to see on the latest site plans. So the mitigation or the vegetation plan is currently under review as well. So they're looking at all those issues.
Thank you, Ron. Anything else, Mr. Dwyer?
No, I think that's fine with me. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Okay, any other members of the public who would like to speak? There's some names out there I haven't seen before, Mr. Drew Gemills or Ms. Kashusha. I don't know if you're here to speak about this, if you can hear me, but you're more than welcome to speak, or Marty Ayeo. I don't know if you're here for this last chance. Okay. Calling it. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing? Kim, thank you. Second. Laura, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Public hearing is closed. Okay, Ron, what are our next steps, please?
Well, let's just touch on one last subject. You did receive another bit of public comment from John Hammer. He was unable to attend tonight, but I know he's transmitted an email letter to the board just to acknowledge for the record that his comments have been received and are being considered by the board.
Thank you, Ron.
And then once the public hearing is closed,
it is
again,
closed.
as I've indicated before, all the other prior statutory issues have been addressed. So at this point, with the close of the hearing, you may wish to consider the drafting of a resolution for the next meeting.
And what about the open conservation board assessment? Is that something we need to await?
That could be a condition of approval, but they've already issued comments to both the board and the applicant. So it's expected that those will get resolved. That permit will be forthcoming.
Do you have that in writing from Max that a permit will be forthcoming?
No, there's no. His letter does not make that statement. I'm just saying that the Conservation Board comments have already been transmitted to the applicant. So they're now in the applicant's hands to address.
So look, I'll take the sentiment of the board. I find I'd like to try and stick with precedent when we get open Conservation Board questions. I think we typically wait for those things to be resolved before we approve things. And so while I'm mindful of speed and we're trying to be, I think, fairly quick and have been with this application, I also want to be mindful of one of our sister boards or brother boards, whatever you want to call it, cousin boards, is fellow board is still in process with topics.
Neil, if I may.
Ron.
Neil?
Yeah, please, Steve.
I'd suggest that the thing to do is to direct Ron to prepare it for next month. And if you haven't heard from the CB gotten comments to your satisfaction, then you just don't adopt it. You put it off until you do. But to have it ready to go will help the applicant and, help the board move it along if you're in a position to do that.
That sounds reasonable. Sentiment of the board, folks? Can you see a head nod? Any? Thank you, Kim. Others?
Yeah. Jason, I watched the meeting. I watched the conservation board meeting. It seems like you're pretty close. What was your take on that? It seemed like you were, I mean, they definitely you had some pushback, but it seemed like you were pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of fine tuning the wetland mitigation plan, really for this. It's really for this piece that comes around to the side. We're going to have to provide a little bit more there, I think, is what they want to see. So we can certainly do that.
And the applicant's right. So it sounded like the applicant was willing to.
He's totally willing to do. Right. He's got a landscape architect on board, and he's working on it, and he's ready and willing to make improvements to this wetland buffer.
Yeah, my take was that you were very close.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, they were good with the whole length of the. There's been no objection to the whole length of driveway in the. Using this existing traveled way through the buffer, and they haven't really had any concerns with that. It's really just this ending that we're trying to.
I'd like not to adjudicate what another board is going to tell us they think. So let's let them tell us what they think, not if you don't mind, because I want to. I think for us to vote on this next month, we have to have affirmative approval from the conservation board that things have been addressed. So that's going to be the stipulation that we have to have an affirmative in writing. Yeah, Max says it's good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
so
we're working on it.
I'm fine. I'm fine to take Ron's point. So can I get a motion to direct Ron to create final resolutions? Thank you, Kim. Second, Neil, any discussion about what we do going forward? Are people comfortable with this approach? Okay, so we will not vote on it next month. I will not bring it before you unless we have the approval from the conservation board. Is that clear to everyone? Is that fair, Mr. Johnson? Okay, so let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Johnson, we'll see you next month, and just keep us abreast, please. And if it's not in by then, let's not use the board's time then if we don't have it in from Max.
Thank you, everyone. We'll keep you posted. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's bang out the Polhemus piece. I know it says, Glenn, you were going to give us a view of this garage from the trails. I think we already directed for approval, did we not, Ron? Last time? You're on mute, Ron.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you've got an approval resolution in front of you for action.
Yeah, good. So Glenn, I know you're going to just do a quickie on this, the views.
If I could share my screen. You guys see it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as I've been through Ron's resolution, it really covers all the topics. Essentially, you're putting 1,000 square foot garage over in the northwest corner of this property. You'll remember it's on the west side of Route 9D, between Route 9D and the river. It's got frontage also on Manitou Station Road. The Polhemus excavating contracting business has been on this site for a long time, certainly longer than I've been here, and I'm pushing 50 years. So there is no really other activity except for this proposed garage, which is just north of the stable that's down in this location. Like I said, it's just over 1,000 square feet. It's commercially zoned property. You had asked for some question. Kim had asked for a question with regard to possible impacts on the visual impacts from people walking the trails on the property to the north of Manitou Point Preserve. We submitted a letter report and map and a couple of photographs to show that the garage won't really impact it. You will see it probably a little bit, but it's nestled between the view is of the barn and the residential structure here. They're both in the field of view. So, and there's a couple of trees in the way that are blocking one of the views. So any impact will be absolutely minimal, and from several hundred feet away. So with that, I'd be pleased to have you act on the resolution.
You want to show the picture on the screen, please?
Well, I will try.
Unless, did every board member get a chance to see it in their packets, or they would like
Well,
to? Yeah,
here,
you
I
got
put it on the screen. Well, this is the second page of the letter.
Yeah, there you go.
And this is all highlighted in red. I walked the trail and sketched it on this topo map from the Manitou Point survey. And I took 2 photographs at this, put a close point. You see, at this point from the west side, you're coming up a steep embankment. You get to kind of a landing and flat area where you could turn around and see it. Or if you're coming the other way, you could look over and see it. And then you keep further, you start bending around to the east, and there's another point that's directly, which is sort of the direct line of sight where you can see it. I'll have to rotate this. I hope I'm able to rotate this view. Rotate view. Sorry, rotate view right. So the proposed, this is the first site as the one that's coming up from the west. This is the barn, and over here to the left is there's the house. The garage storage building will be behind these trees at that point. And I'll show you. And let's see, one more. And this is from 400 feet away. Again, you have a stand of trees. You can get a little glimpse of the driveway. You can see the barn building right where my cursor is now. And this is, all bare trees at this point. It was taken, the photographs were taken, I don't know the exact date, but like I guess December 2nd. So trees are bare. That's what you're going to see in the worst condition.
Any questions? No? Okay. Anyone else? No questions? Glenn, thank you for putting, Kim, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you, Glenn, for going out and doing that.
You're welcome.
Hey, he should pay you as exercise. It's good for him. So can I get a motion then to approve the resolutions that we had prepared? Kim first, Dennis second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, good. Glenn,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, I'm going to follow on the path I had suggested earlier. I'd like to do the Garrison Golf Course first. I think we have a more limited set of topics tonight. We have a couple of things we have to handle, one piece of content, a couple of administrative topics tonight. So with everyone's permission, and as long as the Hudson, a lot of the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival Garrison Golf Club gang is ready. We're going to have Mr. Canning talk us through his report on the peak traffic. Thank you for doing that. I think you can show up the pictures of the bridge, and then we'll talk about 2 scheduling topics. So Cheryl, if you'll let in the Garrison Golf Club and Shakespeare folks, will have that report. John, the floor is yours. Actually, actually, John, before that, let me just back up. Sorry, I just 2 quick things I want to say. Okay, and I don't know how much this was communicated in town. I just want to be very clear. I think this is a really important project, and I don't think, as I said last time, and I think I've said it a couple of times, I don't think there's anyone on this board that doesn't think this is good for the community. And yet there are people on different viewpoints, have different views of this project. And as with every single project, most people have a viewpoint. And usually that viewpoint is tied to one's proximity to the property. So I just want to be clear that the best way for a community like ours of our size to move forward with something like this is with decorum and friendliness and politeness and knowing that we're all going to be living close to each other no matter what happens. And I'm being somewhat opaque in what I'm saying. I think I'm referring to a particular incident that happened a couple of weeks ago. And I don't want to see that kind of behavior in our community from anyone. We're all here trying to do our best for serving the community. You guys are doing your best to put forward a good project for the community and for your organization. I think we all have the best of intentions. And I think anyone who's participating in this process, whether as a board member or whether as a member of the public, should abide by those rules of decorum. Everyone can get heated about things, but there's lines that are not worth crossing and should not be crossed. And I think there was a line crossed recently, and I don't want to see that anymore happen. And I'm not talking about anyone in this call in particular, but I do think we have to all be mindful. We're all here building a community together. So I say that those opaque comments in effort to just make sure we stay with on the right side of right. Then the second thing is, let's just remind folks, we did many hours over the last two meetings going through detailed parts, the part 3 of the environmental impact statement. There was one detailed discussion tied to, I don't even remember what letter chapter, it was traffic letter S. No, it was F, whatever the hell it was. Traffic was one of the letters. And so we had this discussion about understanding the peak volume of traffic using one whole day, a busy day, a Saturday, and seeing the way the traffic would mount based upon the different programming. And John has given us an hour by hour view of that. That's what we're doing here for the members of the public. So John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good to see you all. So I presume I may share the screen.
Please.
Okay, thank you. And if you can just confirm that you can see it, please.
Yes, sir.
All good?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So you did request that we provide the specifics of how the population of the site would change across the hours of the busiest Saturday and how that would translate into vehicular trips, similar to what we had provided for the ebb and flow across the entire year. So we provided you with 2 sets of graphs. We wanted to be consistent with the majority of the materials that we've provided to you. So the first set of graphs basically shows traffic projections with afternoon, for a Saturday with afternoon events and with evening events. That would be the indoor theater, the outdoor theater, weddings, the restaurant, the hotel, pretty much everything. And then recently, at the suggestion of your traffic consultant, Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival committed to not having Saturday matinee indoor performances if there was a wedding event. So the second set of graphs that I'll go through basically will show you that, and it will demonstrate, I hope, what the benefit of that is. That was the suggestion of your traffic consultant. So with that, the graph that you have up in front of you is, again, this is the 95th percentile. So it's pretty much, we expect the busiest Saturday that you will see at the facility. And it is the population, the number of people on the site at the various times of the day. Just looking at the graph, you can see that the top number is somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200. It's a little north of 1,100, which is what we had presented in the graphs previously for the monthly peaks. And you can see that in the early morning hours, there's very few people there. We have broken it down in this graph. I've tried to keep the colors consistent, and the tables are provided also so that you could dig into them and see what the actual numbers were and where everybody was going. The blue is basically Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. The really dark blue is the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival staff that reside on site. There's about 30 of those. The slightly less dark blue is Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival non-resident staff. There's also about 30 of those. So they obviously live off site, and then they come on when there's a performance and they do what they need to do. And after a performance, then they go home. Then the, let's call it the sky blue, is the number of people that will attend a performance for a tent performance. The maximum attendance is 530. I think we've got a maximum when everybody else is maxing out at 521 out of 530. And for the indoor tent, we have, I think, 218 out of 225. So you can see the blue there is the indoor tent, or is the tent, which is quite big for a matinee, and then quite big again for an evening performance. The light blue is the indoor theater. It would be on top, obviously, in addition to the tent, and that's a lesser number, obviously. And then in red, it's the banquet. So we've got shown here 2 weddings. There'll never be 2 weddings at the same time, but there could be a wedding in the morning and a wedding or a wedding in the afternoon. And rather than sending you in a whole nother set of graphs, we just put them on the same graph. If you want to know what an evening is like, put your left hand over the left side of the graph. And if you want to know what an afternoon looks like, put your right hand over the right side of the graph. So the wedding, we show the staff in the dark red, and then we show attendees in the lighter red, 200 attendees for a wedding. And then we have the restaurant, both the staff and the diners. The staff are in the light yellow and the diners are in the, let's call it beige. And then to round it out, we have hotel staff. There's only 3 or 4 of them. You can hardly see it there in the darker green. And the guests, hotel guests, which are in the lighter green. So if you sum them all up, you can see how between 11 and 1, you get a large influx of people into the site from 1 through, let's say, 3 o'clock, 3:30. You're at a fairly stable population. From 3 to 4:30, you have a large departure from the site. From 5 to 7, you have the second wave, if you want to call it that, for an evening performance. You'll note that there is a separation between the afternoon and evening. There is some overlap, but there is a separation between the bulk of them, which is important and good. Then you have a steady number across from 7 to 9. And then after 9, you have pretty much everybody departs the site in the evening. So that's the population and how it varies with the time of day. And then we have in the tables indicated how many of each various uses will, stay on the site. So for example, some of Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival spectators will also go to the restaurant. Some of them may stay at the hotel. Some of the banquet people may stay at the hotel. So that's indicated. We also have, which is typical for larger weddings, some of the wedding attendees traveling by bus. And we also have a small number of people traveling to and from Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival by the shuttle that will be to the Garrison. So we applied all of these factors, which are in the table, to the number of people that were in the graph that I had just shown you. And this is what it translates into vehicular trips. This is the sum of the ons and the offs. Rather than giving you too much information, I just said, let's lump all of the trips together in and out. So you can see in the 12 to 1 period, that's when you get a lot of people arriving for the afternoon activities, and it maxes out at, I'm going to say 250, at least over 200. Then you have a lull in the middle of the day for the afternoon activities, and then you get an increase in the late afternoon up to about 350, let's say, as you have people departing from the afternoon activities. And then that drops a bit, but you have more activity again in the 6 to 7 hours. People start to arrive for the evening activities. You've got a lull in the middle of the evening as the evening activities go on. And then you have the greatest amount in the late evening, because when the show is over, everybody goes home. So that's 300 and I'm going to say it's 360 or so cars. And just quickly to show you the difference between with and without a matinee event in the indoor theater. So this is with the matinee event in the indoor theater. Here's the matinee event. And if we take it out, you can see it's gone here, and the afternoon traffic is gone down. So that means less traffic coming in the early afternoon hour, less traffic going out in the late afternoon hour. And then what that means from a traffic, I'll do it one more time just so it's visually, I guess, easier to see. And so what that does from a traffic perspective, this is the traffic projections that we had for both the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival and for the tent and for the indoor theater. And I would like to point out on this graph, rather than giving you 2 colors for each use, I just lumped Hudson Valley all together as blue, the banquet all together is red, the restaurant all together is yellow, and the hotel trips altogether as green. The Davis residence is in there somewhere, but let's not talk about that. So this is with an afternoon wedding and with an afternoon indoor theater matinee. So if we take the matinee out of it, you can see that the number of trips goes down fairly considerably, not as dramatically as with the number of people, but it still goes down fairly considerably in the early afternoon and the late afternoon. And it was the late afternoon period that was identified by your consultant as an area of concern at the intersection of Route 9D with Snake Hill Road. So in a nutshell, and not to take up too much of your time, that is the best way I could present to you visually the relationship between time and the number of people and the number of vehicles. And then we did provide all of the backup material that you could go through it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
John, thank you. Very helpful. And as a guy who spends a lot of his professional time taking the complex and making it visually understandable, that was helpful. So board members, questions? Kim, no. Dennis, no. Peter, go.
And the number of cars were determined by how many people in each car? Are we at 2 or 4 at this point?
So it varied, but the most important ones were Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival guests. Mm-hmm. So they were make sure I get this, 2.1 per car. The banquet were 2.5 per car, but 100 of the 200 guests came by bus, which was in 3 buses, and we counted that as 6 trips in and 6 trips out at the start and the end, which was information that was provided to me by Chip from the Garrison. That's typically what they expect, and they rarely have a 200-person wedding. The staff for Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival were 1.5 per car. There was 30 staff, offsite staff. Right. And then the remainder of the staff, and we did include staff for the band and staff for valets, the staff for the hotel, the staff for the restaurant. They were at 1.2 per car.
Okay. And one other very quick question. At this particular time, you're not considering the public use of the land, which is going to be opened, to really be a factor in this. What happened? I mean, could become a really popular place to go. I mean, so should they be figured into these calculations as well?
Well, I mean, I think the best person to answer that might be Davis McCallum from Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. My understanding is that the intent of the application is to make the land and the facilities available to the public as much as possible. But when you have these maximum event days, certainly the pavilion is not going to be made available for the public. And while there may be some people that come in and out and walk through the gardens, it's likely to be a minimal amount. So
okay, that's really what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Other questions? Heidi, anything? Laura?
Heidi, go ahead. I have a quick question. John, did you do a graph that just shows the tent, the car trips with just the outdoor, the tent theater, and not the indoor theater as well? I know you're showing us like the maximum use, but I'm just curious if by chance down the line it eventuates that there are traffic issues and the indoor theater is not built. I'm just curious what would be the traffic situation.
So I don't have a specific graph for that, but what I can do is 2 things that hopefully will help you understand. So in this graph, the sky blue is the tent, and the light blue is the indoor theater. And so if you take the indoor theater out, and if you look at the left side of the graph, that's what it would look like without the indoor theater. I didn't take the indoor theater out of the right side of the graph, but it would look something similar. So that's from the population perspective. And then the only thing I guess I can do the same thing here is if you look, this is the number of vehicular trips with the indoor theater for a matinee. So if you look at the left side where my cursor is, and you can see that—
You're not sharing, John.
Oh, God. How did that happen? Let me figure this out again. Was I not sharing the whole time?
No, you were,
No.
but just in response to my question, you weren't.
Oh, my apologies, Ms. Wendell.
No problem.
Okay, so let me just quickly run through that again. I presume you did not see this. So this is the graph with the sky blue is the Hudson, is the tent, and the light blue is the indoor theater. And so if you watch the left side of the graph and you take the indoor theater out, that's how the population would go down. If you took the indoor theater out and didn't build it all together, the population would go down by the same amount on the right side. So is that clear?
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
then you just have to do the calculation to take out it's this graph. It's the kind of
Right.
this
So
graph.
from a traffic perspective, if you look on the left side, so you can see where the blue here is up to, I'm going to say that's 200, 275, and here maybe it's 185.
Okay.
So 185 and 275. If I take out the theater on that side, it goes down to probably 185 goes down to close to 100, and 275 goes under 200.
Got it.
So that's what it
Okay.
would do, and it would do
Okay.
the same thing on the right side.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, others? Laura, anything? I think I've lost Laura from my screen. There she is. Hey, Laura, you have anything?
No, I just have a general question. Do we have a sense of what the percentage increase is to this maximum traffic assessment to what the maximum was when the golf course was at full operations? It's not a fair question.
I don't have it. I don't have it on the tip of my tongue. I
Okay.
certainly could get you that. I will tell you that it is considerably more when the golf club was at its maximum operations. Just it would be wrong of me to say that it's not more than what the golf course was.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone, Dennis or Neil? I can't see them. I don't know where they have so many people on the screen. There's Neil. Okay. No, Neil, anything? Dennis, nothing? Okay. So I have one. I think it's more of a comment now, not a question, because I think Peter beat me to it. So when I went through your table, and again, thank you for this, it is clear that the reason why there's such an imbalance between the 1,000+ people and the number of cars is this bus assumption.
Yeah.
And it took a little bit of work with your font 3 to get in there, but thank God I had those glasses I got recently to help me see. So walk me through. I heard you mention that Chip has got some viewpoints on this. I'd like to have a little more clarity about the history of there being buses that 45% of your guests take. That sounds like I don't know. I don't run the events. Chip obviously does. I was surprised to learn that 100 of 219 people are taking the bus to weddings. So is that every single week is 3? Go ahead.
Can I confirm that Chip is here tonight? I can't see everybody.
John, Chip's not here, but Marty Agello, who's the associate general manager at the Garrison, is here, and she's been promoted to be a panelist, so she could speak to that question.
Thank you, Marty.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Marty Agello. I've been with the Garrison since 2004 and working all along with Chip Alleman. What I can tell you, it's actually higher than that. I went through the weddings this weekend for 2021. On Friday evenings, we averaged 80% of the weddings, whether they were 200 or 100, that hired busing. Most of the buses they accommodate 47 people. For instance, this Saturday's wedding had 3 buses. That's 141 people out of the 180 this weekend that came by bus. It's a big trend because the hotel is not on the property. It becomes a destination and a wedding weekend experience. Many stay and drive to the hotel, and they all get on the bus at the same time. They arrive at the same time. enjoy the event and depart at the same time. A lot of them have after parties at the hotels, and the brides want to make sure that everybody is leaving at the same time. So most of them now, Fridays and Saturdays are about 80 to 90% now busing. Sundays are not usually busing because people want to get to work on Monday and do not stay over the hotels on Sunday. Some of the bus companies that we recommend are Leprechaun, JTR, who was here this weekend, George Carroll.
I don't think we need a bus. We're not hiring any buses, Marty, but thank you. So Marty, and thank you for that. That's very helpful. All I'm going to say is the following. What I heard you say is that the operative reason is this: there's no hotel because they're going from their hotel here, but there's going to be a hotel. So when there is a hotel, and I'm not asking you to predict because I don't know what's going to happen either, but I heard your comment. It's helpful, and it's dependent on people going from a hotel together to here and then back to the hotel to party. I got it. Okay, thank you.
I will, Mr. Zuckerman, if I can, I will tell you that a 20-room hotel is only a portion of the wedding block.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Very helpful. All right, no more questions then, board members. Thank you, John. I know you guys wanted to show some of the pictures of this bridge. You're more than welcome to, Jan, if you'd like.
John and Laney are going to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Okay, how do I stop sharing, or have I stopped sharing already?
You stopped sharing, John.
Thank God for that. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Laney.
Laney, were you gonna share?
Sure. We will be very quick. We just wanted, we had at our last meeting discussed what the new Snake Hill Road entrance would look like. So we wanted to give some precedent images of this. We wanted to share first these images of an existing span bridge on the Garrison Golf Course. So we have kept this language in mind as we've developed the span bridge that we're proposing for the new entry. These are some precedent images that we've gathered showing you the span bridge. A span bridge means that it allows for the bridge to cross over the wetland without touching that wetland area. So it's better for the environment. And this is a great way to be able to protect that area. And then we, along with the help of Glenn and his team, we've created a section, a conceptual section through the bridge, showing how it would come off of, this is Snake Hill Road on our right-hand side. I'm gonna scroll in a little bit. Snake Hill Road on our right-hand side, you can see coming across, this is the span here. You can see the embankment, the bridge coming across. We've shown where the delineated wetland is, so we are not touching the delineated wetland. And then again, the other embankment on the left-hand side of this image. We feel these are in character with the golf course and the surrounding areas. And as I said, provide great benefit to the wetland because we do not have to touch that delineated wetland.
Great, thank you.
Jan, if there's anything I missed, please jump in.
I'll just say that when we resubmit our environmental assessment form, we had been in previous versions conservative in that preliminary evaluations of the bridge. We had identified some potential impact to the wetland proper, but after studying it more and presenting these images, we're comfortable that we can build this bridge without any impact to the wetland itself. So in our next iteration of the EAF, you're going to see that we're going to go to a zero impact to the wetland proper, and that the buffer is going to be reduced. So we're happy to say with the span bridge that we're able to span this water course without any impact to it, to the wetland proper itself.
Thank you. Board members, questions?
We have a site visit plan. What did we end up for what day did we end up for the next site visit? Was that the
9th of January?
9th of January.
9.
Do we want to stop by there and take it, as long as we're out? Do we want to stop by? Is there any way you can stake it out so we can have a look at it?
Yeah, I think you're onto something. I think there's a material change to the plan. You know, when you move the houses of your guests, when you move the houses from the east to the west, we did walk to the site visit through the first hole, so we all saw that, but there was no attention visually, and I think the public would benefit from a conversation and this board from visualizing the space, because it is a significant physical structure being proposed. So I'd like to suggest this board go take a look at on January 9th as well. I'll let the board weigh in if they think it's a valuable activity. I don't think it's a very long visit. I think it's staring at an overpass basically. But it also would be the chance for the public to see the space too. So I'd like board members' thoughts on what Neil is suggesting. Peter, go ahead.
No, I think it's a great idea to go back for a quick visit. It'll give you a sense of the topography that goes off west of the stream that comes out underneath the current bridge, and it'd be really nice to have a sense of really the lay of the land. For us, we'll have a better view up the slope to the north, and I think it's a great idea.
Good, thank you. Other comments? Go ahead, Jan.
I just wanted to point out, and I think that's a great idea that you revisit it. But just to mention that we had a similar walk with the Conservation Board last week, and we walked them around all the, really all the property, but paid specific attention to the areas where there's wetland and wetland buffer disturbance, and this was obviously a focal point. And we really got pretty good reviews and reception from the Conservation Board on the span bridge, just because of what it is. A span bridge with limited fragmentation, the ability to walk under it and have vegetation below it. I think they saw it for what it was, and that we tried to really preserve that wetland corridor by spanning the wetland resource, as opposed to fragmenting it with a true bridge. The span
That's
is. So just want to let you know that we had the Conservation Board visit, and it, we I think we're received with welcome comment from them on this particular issue.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think we're there not just for the wetlands. That's obviously what Max and the Conservation Board look at. We're there for community character, access.
Yeah, I get it. Just want to mention it.
Road. No, it's good. Yeah. It's good. All right, other board. So let's just take a motion then, and then we can vote. A motion to schedule a public hearing. Site visit for that's one portion of this proposed bridge off of Snake Hill. For I think the 9th, 10 a.m. Peter first. Second, Dennis. All in favor, say aye. Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so let's do this one at 10:30. We'll go to our 9:31 at Benedict Arnold's house over there, and then we'll come over to this site. And it would be helpful, Jan and Lady, if you could stake the corners at least, so we just have visual representation.
The bridge itself?
The bridge itself, yeah. Like where the
sure.
road is, just
to
help us see where it would go.
We could do that for sure.
Okay. All right, last order of business is the long-awaited public hearing for this conversation. And I know we're all looking forward to have that conversation because it's a good milestone and making progress. I think this group of volunteers has been very generous with their time to their community, and it's going to continue to be generous by trying to dual track this project as much as possible, given the magnitude. When I say dual track, I mean giving it the appropriate time it deserves, despite the fact that we're not going to get a doubling of our enormous, munificent salaries. We're gonna do it anyway, and so I'm going to propose to dedicate Thursday. I believe it's January 27th to doing a public hearing for this topic. And I'd like to even more, go one step further and ask that we do it in person somewhere that is an appropriate accommodation venue for such a, what I think will be a well-attended public hearing. I'd like to not do it over Zoom. I'd like to try and do it in person. I think Kim had suggested maybe we do it at maybe Haldane or someplace that there's an actual, go ahead, Kim.
So before we do that, should we ask Steve if there are any restrictions from the governor?
Good point. Good point.
The current restrictions only last through, I believe, January 15th. Now, whether they'll be extended or not, it's a whole nother matter. But if you want to schedule it for the 27th, and then you either need to bump it or change it over to a, because it'll be 17 days. Well, no, it'll be 12 days. It'll be all tight. If you have to go virtual because they haven't lifted the, even then you could still do it, just everybody be masked right now. It's not like you can't have it, it's just everybody be masked. So I would go ahead and schedule it and imagine, anticipate that there won't be further restrictions and you can go forward. And if God forbid there are more restrictions, you could, bump the date into February and go virtual or whatever it is you need to do. But I'd suggest going forward with this plan. Now, can you get Haldane or something like that? I mean,
well, Kim had mentioned it's a large venue. I don't know where, Cheryl, I'm going to put it to your capable hands to find us a venue. I think doing in town hall is just a tight space for what I think will be a well-attended event. Bob, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I think the town hall will be a little bit too small of a space for that. We have the rec center. We can always have the gym at the rec center as well.
That's fine. I mean, the rec center was fine. Yeah, the rec center where we were meeting for a while. I'm fine with that. But Cheryl, I put in your hands. Let's assume with all the applicants team here, which is a good 10-person team, and let's assume at least 30 public speakers is my guess. I'm just making up a number, but something that, and then the board itself. So I think we're talking at least a room to accommodate 50 people. Be fair.
Excuse me, Neil, it's Cecilia. I just wanted to say that there's not much Wi-Fi in the rec center if you're trying to do live for people at home.
So Steve, are we still okay to do this 100% real and not have a virtual simultaneous?
Yeah, no, you can do it 100% live without any simultaneous right now.
We're going to do it live. Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, I believe that the internet at the rec center was upgraded and it was much better than it was, I was told.
So if we can do live via YouTube, and even if maybe someone could participate on Zoom, I think we could have that. I mean, I've been in lots of meetings with the MTA board does both simultaneously. So the technology exists. But let's solve that problem. Cheryl, you're going to work on the right venue live for us to do it. So let's take a motion for January 27th, Thursday, for a public hearing for the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Fest / Garrison Golf Club. Kim is a first, Laura is a second. Any discussion?
Sorry, Neil. Do we want to bump it down to 7 o'clock maybe?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, the problem, guys, is when we do that, I love the theory, but we've been doing 7:30 for like 20 years, and then some days it's like, oh, it's 7 o'clock, and then we did one on Tuesday. I would like to stick with 7:30. I think getting out of this habit is nice for us, but the public knows, and our website says 7:30, and then someone goes, I was late. And personally, I think I'd like to stick. I hear your point. It gets everyone out a half hour earlier, but does anyone want to make a motion for 7:30 for 7 o'clock?
I'll make a motion for 7 o'clock.
Okay. Does anyone want to second it? All right, Dennis wants to second it. Anyone want to vote for 7 o'clock?
Come on.
1, 2, 3. Motion denied. All right, 7:30.
We tried.
Well, that was parliamentary fun. That was awesome.
That was great.
We never did a nested motion before. That was awesome. All right, good try. All right, so we'll stick with 7:30. All in favor, say aye. All right, great. All right, so we have a public hearing. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen,
Mr. Chairman.
ladies. We will see you guys then.
Thank you.
Well, we'll see you before then at the site visit.
Yes, thank you. And I hope to see you, Dan. Thanks. All right. Last order of business, Hudson Highlands Reserve. Discussion of the final environmental impact statement. Let me get my tome over here. Okay. All right. Do we have the applicants here?
Yes, Mr. O'Rourke and Mr. Gross.
Okay, great. All right, good. So look, our plan tonight is to give you some very clear direction on the FEIS and whether we can, as we try to. And I know, thank you, Mr. O'Rourke and Mr. Gross for working with AKRF. We've had a lot of bounces between the two of you or your two organizations to get there. So do everyone, okay. So what I'd like to do, I think we can let AKRF make some opening remarks about where they are with this thing. And I know, Steve, you've taken some comments, you've made their edits, they've requested. And then it's time for the board members, which we have not done, to give some comments about what they're seeing in the FEIS, any changes they require, and frankly, some guidance from them about the project and where they stand. I think you deserve that at this point. And Mr. O'Rourke has asked for that, and that's what we're going to do. So I'll let Chris and Aaron make any comments they'd like to make about where we are with the FEIS based on their professional viewpoint, and then we're going to go by board member, one by one, to get any specific comments, any edits of changes on the FEIS, and then get their views individually about the project. Okay, that's the plan. So, Chris or Aaron?
I could start. Good evening, Aaron Werner, AKRF. Just to give a step back for how we got to tonight, at the November meeting, we offered some comments to the applicant with also some guidance about how to improve the voice of the document. We followed up after that with a meeting with the applicants and the applicant's attorney, where we discussed the approach to get these issues resolved. We gave, like I said, some example language of how to improve voice throughout. We didn't, it was a summary. It wasn't really meant to be, these are our voice comments. But they went ahead with that. They made some revisions. They submitted it again on December 2nd. So the December 16th memo that was out today included some additional, what we're calling the final comments to get the voice issues resolved, because we didn't think that all of them were addressed in the manner that was acceptable to us. So you'll see a lot of the comments in that memo are just, here's the language we would like you to insert. And we communicated with the applicant's consultant yesterday and today on the edits, and they've actually resubmitted a red line version to us about an hour before the meeting. So we're going to take a look at that to make sure that everything's been addressed. And as our memo states, if those are addressed, we have no objection to the planning board moving to accept the document. The next step in the process would be obviously accepting it. A notice of completion would be issued, and then we would work on a finding statement within 30 days of the filing of the FEIS.
Chris, anything to add?
No, they covered it pretty well. Thank you, Aaron.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, Ron, anything to add?
No, I have nothing more.
Okay. Steve, you want to say anything?
Well, AKRF has a number of comments. My understanding, based on what Aaron has said, is that if the revisions that they propose are incorporated into the existing draft of the FEIS, then the FEIS will be in a condition where this board could accept it. It's not currently in that condition, but what you could do is accept it subject to the incorporation of the AKRF comments into the draft FEIS. And once that happens and that document is filed, that's when the 30-day time frame to adopt your finding statement would start to run. I'm not sure that even if we do that, depends on when they file, obviously, assuming they're willing to make those changes. that the planning board would still be in a position at its next meeting to be within the 30-day window for adoption of the finding statement. So you may need to ask, if you go this route and you adopt the finding statement subject to incorporation of those comments, for an extension of the 30-day timeframe to the next planning board meeting.
Well, that's assuming the board has no edits themselves tonight.
Yes, of course. In the event that there were additional edits, those would have to be incorporated as well. You're right.
And to add to Steve, the 30-day clock would begin once a clean, hard copy, digital copy is sent to the town for review at the town board by any of the public, and it's posted to the town's website. And that notice of completion with instructions for the involved agencies and interested agencies to review it is sent out. That's when the 30-day clock would begin on the findings. So that could happen, a few days from now if we've reviewed, once we review their edits and we accept them, or anything that comes out tonight from the board. If we tell them, yes, this is good, go ahead and go to print, and then that comes into the town and it's ready to be distributed, that's when the 30-day clock starts on findings. Just want to make that clear.
Helpful. And then the last thing is, Steve, before we go around by the board members, I did want you to just describe for the board the linkages, if at all, between accepting the FEIS and what the finding statement would then provide or state.
Okay. Working on that backwards, if you will. The finding statement makes a determination as to whether all of the identified potential significant adverse environmental impacts, and they're listed in the EIS, have been mitigated to the maximum extent practicable. It doesn't mean possible. It isn't a wish list. It means you take a look at the potential significant adverse environmental impacts that you've identified, and you say, what's reasonable given the proposed development of this property for this applicant to do to mitigate these identified impacts. Now, the EIS, and particularly the FEIS, spells out what is proposed as mitigation measures in regard to each of those potential identified impacts. So when you read through the FEIS, if you come to a potential identified potential significant impact, and the EIS says, we propose these measures, and these measures adequately address that concern, and this board adopts the FEIS that says that, the board will not then be in a position to adopt a finding statement that says, no, that potential significant adverse environmental impact wasn't adequately addressed, and they have to do X, Y, and Z in addition to this. So you're bound by the FEIS. It is this board's document. So you're going to want to look carefully at what the content of that is, because it's going to shape the finding statement that you adopt.
That's right. Board member questions on that? Kim, go ahead.
Who's going ahead? Me?
I'm sorry? I said, Kim, go ahead.
All right. So if we say tonight, pick whatever AKRF, has presented and, it's all fixed, then there's nothing else we can do. Is that right? Is that what you just said, Steve?
What I said is that the finding statement must be based on what's in the FEIS. So once that FEIS is done, you should have read it over already, but I mean, once the final changes and everything are incorporated, you must look at that carefully, because that's what's going to determine what's in your finding statement. Your finding statement is going to say there was this potential adverse impact in this one, and this one, and this one, and they propose to mitigate it with this and this and this and this. And if you can, based on what's in the FEIS, say, well, yeah, but it's not enough, well, that's fine, you could do that. But if what's in the FEIS indicates, the facts in it and the logic in it indicates that that is enough, it would be arbitrary and capricious of you to say, well, no, it's not, because this is the document that you're going to base your findings on. The FEIS isn't the finding statement, but is the basis for the finding statement. So you get to, read through and to some extent interpret, I mean, to the extent that it can reasonably be used as interpretation, the facts and the arguments that are in there. But whatever your finding statement is, it must have a basis in the FEIS and the EIS. I mean, both of them together. There's studies and information, graphs, charts, the whole 9 yards.
So how do can you just run us through how we craft this finding statement?
How you draft it?
Or how we craft it? Yeah.
Oh, craft it. Well, what you're going to do, they're pretty much formulaic, is you have, a description of the project, and you can, take that as, language in the EIS gives you a pretty good description. You won't want to take it word for word, but you'll use that as a description. And then you'll say, we identified the following potential significant adverse environmental impacts, and we'll list them down. And then we'll say, in regard to this, they propose to do that. In regard to this, they say nothing needs to be done. In regard to this, they're supposed to do that. And you will state whether it's adequate or not. But if you want to state that it's adequate and then the FEIS doesn't show that it's adequate, you got a problem. If you want to state that it's inadequate and the FEIS shows that it is adequate, again, you have a problem. You need to ground your findings on what's in the EIS. That's the document that you're basing your determination on.
Steve.
I cleared all. Go ahead, Rick. You want to say something?
Yes, if I may, just to, I guess, further explain the issue, because it's a very, very good question that's being asked about how do you craft this. But, as Steve mentioned, logic is a very important component, and equally important is reasonableness. And there's lots of case law that talks about the rule of reason when you're dealing with the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the actions and things that occur in accordance with SECRA. And a framework is, you have a DEIS. There was a proposed action that was put forth. That proposed action did have a bunch of things. It had an equestrian center. It had certain open space. It had certain locations for improvements and disturbances. And then what happens through that environmental review process, and it happened here, there is, shall we say, in some respects, an evolution of a plan, and it should be being responsive to the comments that have been raised. From the sponsor's perspective, the elimination of the equestrian center was a big deal. And I think from an environmental impact perspective, it was a very big deal because of all the attendant issues related to having an equestrian center. So too, the shortening of the road, the relocation from our
Can we not get into the actual, Steve was talking about how to do a finding statement related to the FEIS. You're now getting into the merits of all the things you've changed. So can we just focus on the question? You wanted to amplify something Steve was already answered.
Right. And I forgive me, I didn't mean to digress or go off the rails here, but what I'm talking about is logic and reason is a very, very important component. And you're absolutely right. You have to look at the facts. You have to look at the circumstances and see what's happened. And that's all I'm saying. That's there cannot be a disconnect in terms of the evolutionary process that you've just gone through.
Okay, so that helpful acknowledgement what Steve said. So any other questions for Steve? Thank you, Kim, for asking that question. Other questions of Steve, process-wise, and the linkage between acceptance of this document and writing the finding statement. No more questions among the board. Okay.
Chairman, can I just add something?
Yeah, Aaron.
I was just going to say that, back to Kim's question, I think, AKRF is assuming we would take the first crack at drafting that finding statement for you to review. It wasn't something that we were going to have the board write, but it is it's something that's in the voice of the board. It's the lead agency's document. There'll be a lot of phrasing such as the planning board finds this, the planning board finds that, and it's all tied to the FEIS conclusions. And to a lot of extent, the DEIS too, which outlines, the original project and a lot of the mitigation, which is some of it's gone because the equestrian center is gone, but a lot of the mitigation that they're proposed by design in the project, as well as what they're doing, required by code, like the SWIP and other things for mitigation, are still proposed. So, just wanted to make that clear that we would draft that for you if you want us to. And I assume you do.
I'm gonna make Heidi write it. So, all right, so let's get going here. Speaking of, so we're board members, I'm gonna now turn to you in order, in sequence, to answer two questions. One, do you have any specific items in the FEIS that you would like to see changed? Not knowing that it is not possible for us to have balanced that against what Aaron and Chris have suggested. So any specific edits? And secondly, to give any indications at one level above of how you're feeling about the project relative to our secret findings earlier on. So I'll start with Heidi, and we'll just go in reverse alphabetical order for fun, coming to me last as the chair. So Heidi, you have the floor.
Okay. And I understand that what we're looking at is whether or not the applicant is adequately mitigated the concerns that were raised with respect to the DEIS. And I take the applicant's point that some changes were made to the project. In my opinion, they are not adequate to mitigate the problems that were pointed out about the project. I think there should be fewer houses. I think the houses should be pulled back from the pond more. I think that the wildlife corridors should be more clear. I think some of the concerns that were raised about the vegetation and wildlife have not been sufficiently mitigated. And it's not a wish list. I think, they've come some way, but a little more way would be might do it, but it isn't there. And then I still feel like there's concerns about the water resources on the site that I don't feel like have been answered, whether or not there are seeps, how water's moving on the site. I don't feel like I know exactly what's happening with the amphibious life on the site other than the pond. And I think that issue has not really been mitigated sufficiently. I also have concerns. I know that the applicant has said that the site, will maintain a rural feel in terms of the landscaping, but I don't think there's been mitigation of the concern was raised with respect to the site, that it's going to be, lawns and houses without consideration of the rural character of the area. So I don't think that concern has been adequately mitigated either. And then I'm not sure what's happening in terms of the road access. I think that's still a big open item. I'm not sure, what's happening in terms of road access or traffic. And I'm not saying that was a DEIS issue, but I feel like that issue still is a big unknown about the project that creates uncertainty. So those are my feelings. I think, I do understand I'm not saying there isn't going to be a development here, but I feel like the concerns that have been raised have not been mitigated to the extent that's practicable. And the pulling back a little bit of some of the houses from the pond is just not sufficient to mitigate those concerns. I had put Post-its next to a gazillion items in the first binder I got, tried to transfer them to binder number 2, which was supposed to be a red line. That wasn't entirely successful, so I can't point to specific page, chapter, and verse. But certainly with respect to the responses, my concerns do not have to do with the editing and the style of the language. I know that the FEIS is supposed to be our document, so I very much appreciate the consultant's work in honing the language and making sure that, you know, that the language of the FEIS would be the language of the planning board. But aside from that issue, I just think there is major concerns that remain unmitigated to the extent practicable. So though, and I to some degree, I would point to areas where AKRF in its write-up has said this issue was only partially addressed. Many of the items that I would point out have been raised by commenters, including the Hudson Highlands Land Trust and others. I just don't think that they've been mitigated to the extent practicable.
Thank you, Heidi, for that. Next in the alphabetical reverse order is Mr. Neil Tillman.
Thanks, Chairman. I think we're very close. I do hear some of the other board members' concerns about the density around the pond. I think that if you could, I'm looking at lot 24 specifically, and 20, I think it's 20 and 20. I think it's 20 and 24. I think if you could either pull them back more from the pond.
Neil, do me a favor. Since just use a clock. If the pond is a clock and noon is noon, which one you talking about?
I'm talking about 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock.
11 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Got it. Okay, thank you.
So I think if you could either pull back or eliminate one of those lots, I think you'd be a whole lot closer to. I see the concerns about the ponds. I recognize they have pulled them back, but I think that might be something you might want to consider.
Neil, anything in particular from the FEIS you want to highlight?
No, that's my only take on that. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Laura O'Connell.
Thanks, Neil. So I just want to echo both Heidi and Neil. I do agree that the density of the houses are still slightly too dense, but it's well within reason. But I am a little concerned because I did read the memo that came from AKRF, and I want to echo Heidi's concern that I think that, like, as we're all saying, the statement is almost there, but it's not 100% there, and it's not reading as that. So, I'm just going to go on good faith and assume that the applicant is going to take AKRF's comments into consideration and adjust the language as such. But I don't know if I would be able to blindly say and vote and agree and say that that's the case until we would see the document.
It sounds like you're saying you're not comfortable accepting this document this evening.
There's just a little too much in the AKRF memo that, that doesn't make me feel comfortable to start the timer, so to speak. Yeah.
Fair. And just I want to press you a bit more. So Neil was very specific about a house around the pond. So was Heidi. Is there a specific environmental impact you think they could actually further mitigate by doing? Is there an action you would be recommending to them as a, hey, do this thing, and it would make it feel less, it would feel like then you've done the maximum extent practicable? Is there anything you'd recommend?
No, I can just echo what Neil said. I mean, he pointed out the two locations, and it's, I mean, I agree with that. I'm just more concerned about the memo itself and just the language overall.
Thank you. Right, Peter.
So what we're going to do here is really just talk about the specifics of the environmental problems, not our sense of the document
So
itself.
we're doing both. Those are the two twin questions. Question
Okay.
one, any order you want, is specific things in the FEIS
right.
you do not feel comfortable with the way it's written. And then secondly, taking it up a level, your view at this point on the SECRA and whether they have, and Steve can say the line far better than I can, where they have done what they need to do to the maximum extent practical.
Okay. The only real practical thing that I felt was there was a long discussion about the wildlife corridor, and I don't think that really ever seemed to have found a good common ground answer. There was the narrower one, and there was the guy who was talking about the great sheet of how wildlife move through an environment. And I tended to think that the person who wrote the thing about the sheet kind of movement tended to kind of win the day. And I didn't think that the wildlife corridor was really sufficient for my comfort at this point.
Chris and Aaron, can you identify what section Peter's talking about?
It's a long section in the environmental part. Let's see if we can get there. Really page 136, 135. This is on the new big binder that we received. The comment was coming from Clemens, most of them that seemed to be fairly pungent and observant, and I was kind of won over by them. The rest of my comments are pretty much just how I kind of felt about it. When I was reading at the beginning on page 94 about lighting and so forth, and it was kind of bounced back to the housing, the HOA, and I don't have a lot of faith in HOAs sticking to the rules of the game. They kind of do what they want once nobody's looking. So I don't know what kind of fertilizer gets put down or how much or things like that. So I felt uncomfortable with the reliance on the HOA. I don't think that the document itself had much of a forward-looking feel. We're going to be encountering a profound environmental change in the next couple of decades, and this is going to be a different landscape in a couple of decades, and I think that is something that needs to be at least thought about or brought into the picture. What's going to happen to the particular trees? These are all dying because of a particular bug or a particular temperature or something like that. It felt that there wasn't really a sense of there's going to be a tomorrow, and what's this going to look like tomorrow, and what's that pond going to look like tomorrow? Because most of the ponds around here that get built up around eutrophy fairly quickly, and but there have been a lot of good responses to the AKRF questions about that. Two final things, do these as fast as I can. If we want this document to be in our voice and to be our document, there are a couple of things here that certainly aren't my voice. On page 121, there's a comment that says that it will not widen the suburban land use type beyond what exists immediately to the south and north of the project site. Well, frankly, Route 9 to the north and south of the project site is not something I aspire to, nor do I feel it's something that we want to stake our community character on. So adding another subdivision can't be excused or given a right simply because somebody else has done something else across the street. And it looks good in that way. And speaking of that, my final comment is it felt very combative. This is a conservation subdivision, and something that should actually be embraced and not felt like, here's a question to something that you've done. Well, we've taken care of that. We've done that. We've done the best we could, or it won't fit into our financial picture. It doesn't feel positive. Doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel like it's a project that somebody really wants to see done right. And a certain amount of defensiveness and so on in the language I'd like to see changed. And that's all I have to say.
Aaron, have you been able to capture those comments of Peter's?
Can you tell me the page again and the response number that you just mentioned?
So which one?
You mentioned a specific page of the FEIS, and you where you didn't like the language, and the response number.
121, page 121, response 3B.56, third paragraph. The comments on the HOA and making sure that they did everything right was on 94 and 93. And the other ones were general ideas.
So within 3B56, they did make some updates to that based on our comments recently. You haven't seen this yet, but it just came back. Can you just point to the sentence you were concerned with?
Yeah, it's the third paragraph, the short one that starts with thus. Thus, while the proposed action will introduce development, it will not widen the suburban land use type beyond what exists. And what exists is not necessarily what everybody aspires to.
I got to tell you, Aaron, I'm not sure that, I mean, Peter's comments are certainly well taken as far as that goes, but I think many of them are just kind of general, this is how I feel about the project and trying to give some direction on it. I don't know that they need to be incorporated into or I don't even know they're capable of being incorporated to the FEIS. For example, I'm not criticizing in any way, Peter, don't get me wrong here, but I mean, a subjective feel that an HOA may not live up to its obligations is all well and good, but it's not really the kind of thing you can hang your hat on in an EIS and say, well, they propose to have an HOA enforce this, and we don't find that adequate because we just don't trust HOAs. I mean, if they've proposed it and they have a binding agreement for the HOA to do whatever it says it's going to do, and it's enforceable, I think you have to take that at face value. You could say I'm leery of it, that's all well and good, but I don't know that that's part of the EIS.
Yeah, I thought that a number of things that I said you couldn't hang your hat on at all. They were it was a feeling that, if this is going to be, our document, I just wanted to kind of air out the atmosphere. That's all.
So that one, that paragraph for 3B56 about widening the suburban land use type beyond what exists immediately to the north, south, and north of the site. We didn't have them update any of that. I think what they were trying to say there, and I don't want to speak for the writer, but it's just, I think, saying that introducing residential use east of Route 9 isn't going to be much different from what else is east of Route 9. There's residential to the north and to the south in a similar suburban setting. And that's pretty much what that was trying to say. If you prefer, they soften that by saying this project sponsor believes, so that it's in their words, and or you're acknowledging what they believe with this project. That's something they can do. They've done that throughout this to address a lot of our comments.
Okay.
I did want to make one editorial remark before I go in, which is I actually did appreciate, whether that was from AKRF or the sponsor themselves, the notion that this says the sponsor, et cetera, the project sponsor. I think that's very helpful language, because so much of this is the sponsor's opinion or the sponsor's actions, no matter whether it says it's our document or not. I think that inclusion of that subject is very helpful to me. I thought that was whoever's artifice that was very helpful, and thank you. And Peter, thank you for your thoughts.
Okay.
Okay, Dennis.
Yes, excuse me. I believe really at this time, the adjustments that were made based on concerns that the community had, that the board had, that the applicant has really made reasonable adjustments to their plan. I like to see the changes made based on the comments at AKRF, because there are the partially addressed items. So I'm taking it that once this red line document is distributed, we can read that and have a little bit more comfort with it. But at this point in time, I truly believe that the applicant has made the adjustments that I feel are very reasonable. So.
And you have no changes, no edits to the FEIS?
No, not that I see, nothing that jumped out at me.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Kim?
Okay, so I agree with Laura that the tone, that the editing for voice, all of that, this is the third iteration for that. And I think it's the 5th AKRF memo. So, I'd really like to see all of that clarified before I would vote to accept this. I have a couple of, I just want to say something about the whole issue of suburban. This is supposed to be a conservation subdivision, which is supposed to be different from a suburban layout. So if we're comparing it to suburban, I'm just, that's a little jarring. If we're saying, that it's no worse than suburban or whatever, it's like suburban, or, that one of the complaints about this particular layout has been that the houses aren't particularly clustered, that they are on, 1 acre lots, and that's more like a, suburban development than a true conservation subdivision clustered development. So that's my comment about that. I would like to ask, because I'm still trying to understand how the entry road fits into all of this. And I want to ask Steve about that, because I seem to remember there was an issue where we needed to have approval from the town board to change the zoning for a particular part of the land in order to get the density that they were looking for, or to meet town road standards or whatever. And I don't know where that fits into our assessment here.
Well, I can't speak to the roadway. I can tell you that earlier on, and I kind of think it's still part of this, they wanted a certain density, and so they'd wanted to change like an industrial small portion of the land that's actually going to be open space to residential. They may have gotten rid of that because they don't need it for the number of lots, or it might still be part of the project. I'm just not sure where we are on the proposal to have a zoning change in regard to density at this point. The roadway, I didn't think was an issue anymore. I think maybe Ron and AKRF could speak more to that, but that's where we stand on the zoning.
Okay, so I guess, so Ron, when you did your calculations, the calculations for how many houses, they're allowed to have, didn't have anything to do with whether or not there was going to be an equestrian center, correct? The equestrian center was just sort of laid on top of the existing density calculation.
That's correct. Right?
Yeah,
that's correct.
So removing the equestrian center doesn't change that density calculation. And I'd like to know, if in order to get the appropriate density calculation, that zoning change has to happen.
Yes, it does. You remember the original calcs that were done, and by now they're some years old. There's a small bit of the project along Route 9 that's commercial industrial zone. I think it's I can't recall the zoning designation, but they're proposing that be absorbed into the residential zoning district, and they're basing that lot acreage in order to justify 2 additional lots for the project. So when we did our original calcs, we were saying that if the zoning amendment was approved by the town board, they would wind up with 24 lots. If it was not authorized, they would be limited to 22 lots. Then the lot count is still in question. We're working with the applicant's consultant to get the appropriate plan information so we can verify that lot count. They still believe it's a 25 lot count that's permitted, and that will be resolved. And it's addressed in this FEIS by saying that's the subject of further review that'll happen subsequent to the completion of the environmental review.
And is that, and that's possible? You know, because it seems like if we accept the FEIS, we don't get to change anything. Steve?
Well, the way it would work, I'm sorry, is that the secret review is being based upon the presumption that because it has to be for secret purposes, you understand, that they will get the zoning change. Because if they don't get the zoning change, the more intense secret review will still cover the lesser amount of lots. So what's going to happen is you're going to go through secret, then and make a determination based on and this is the wrong term, but I mean, worst case scenario, if you will, in terms of the number of lots. It isn't really worse, but I mean, most lots. And then once secret is complete, they would go to the town board, petition for the zoning change. If they get the zoning change, they go ahead with the proposed development under the secret review that took place for the highest number of lots. And if they don't get the zoning change, then of course the larger secret review would also cover the less number of lots. Does that make sense?
And ultimately, the permitted density is going to be based on what's allowed in the zoning ordinance for conservation subdivisions. It's going to come back to that formula.
So what does that mean? So how many is that?
Well, no, that's I'm just describing it as there's a discrepancy between the applicant's calculations and my own, and that'll be finalized pretty quickly, but it still has not been resolved. So it's either 24 or 25 lots if they get the zoning change, and it'll be 22 or 23 lots if the town board does not approve the change.
Okay.
But I'll have that tied down pretty shortly.
Okay, and what about the road?
The road, they're carrying a maximum grade along the entrance of 12%. Internally, all the project roads have been upgraded and no longer need any variances from the town board.
Okay.
So they've addressed that concern.
That's okay. So, and if the DOT doesn't give permission for this road to happen, then that's that. You know,
Right. The whole concept of the project is predicated on Route 9 access. If they don't obtain a DOT permit, the project is envisioned, I can move forward.
Okay. And our approval doesn't affect DOT approval.
No.
Like DOT isn't going to assume that because we approved something, they should approve something.
No. No, any action you take, if you move in advance of having receipt of that approval, it would be conditioned upon that receipt. So the plans would not be signed until all approvals and all other conditions are satisfied.
Okay. All right. So let me just check my note here. So I too have a concern about the number of houses around the pond. I think there should be at least one fewer. If they end up with this, 24 houses as opposed to 25 houses, perhaps one of the houses around the pond could be that lesser house for protecting the wildlife corridor. And I guess that's, other than I really don't feel comfortable approving anything I haven't read when it comes to tone. So.
A very consistent set of voices from the board. Thank you, Kim. All right, I have 8 comments about the FEIS. Mr. Gross and company, take out your hymnals, please. The cover sheet. We clearly have a disconnect between the number of houses on this little property. Ron Gaynor has said it's 24. A couple of years ago, when we were still sitting over in the library, we said it was 24. You've written on the first page, approval of a 25 lot subdivision.
I will ask you to strike the words 25 and lot. You want to write approval of a conservation subdivision, that's fine. But it is clear that we are not in agreement on how many lots you may have. I am not telling you you're wrong, but I'm telling you that there is a disconnect between what Mr. Gaynor is saying, and you've gone to lengths to explain that he's wrong in his analysis, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I would like that stricken. That's one. Page 15. There are several phrases in here that I don't like. I will describe them. Paragraph number 3, under what says response 2.2. The last word in the paragraph, access to the pond will remain unencumbered. I don't know if that's true. It's unencumbered. Unencumbered means there's no encumbrances. There are a bunch of houses on that are going to ring the pond still. Yes, you took some away, but at least 180 degrees of the pond have houses that are between the road and the pond. That is an encumbrance. So, in my opinion, it is not unencumbered, the access to the pond.
Which response was that?
Page 15, third paragraph, the one that says response 2.0 is literally the last word in the paragraph. I would strike the whole sentence.
2.20, first paragraph, last sentence.
2.20, thank you.
The last sentence should be stricken. Access to the pond will remain unencumbered. That's not correct. Next paragraph. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line, it says the location of the proposed homes also has no significant impact on east-west ecological connectivity of the Ulmer Pond. I don't know if it has no significant impact. I don't know if that's true. I think there is impact. I don't know if it's significant, but I think I'd strike that sentence.
We have changed that wording to read the project sponsor maintains that the modified layout would have no significant impact on east-west ecological connectivity with Ulmer Pond.
That's fine.
So we've taken ownership of that opinion.
Good. Okay, next sentence. This phrase you've used a lot, and I don't know who is your superlative broker, but you like to use superlatives. You write, this connection is preserved in its entirety with the preservation, blah, blah, blah. I would strike that clause. That is gratuitous, in its entirety. I don't think you need that. I certainly don't want that written if it's supposed to be my voice, because I don't think it's in its entirety. And that phrase you'll hear also in another one of my comments. So that's 2 comments done. Next, page 17. I don't like the tone of this whole paragraph, response 2.24. Mr. Gaynor has been serving this town for decades, and he has been the voice of this board for a long time. That Mr. Gaynor is asserted to be wrong. I'm not saying he's infallible. We all are fallible. Ron less fallible. But I think it is unclear that it's actually true that he overstated the areas of the wetlands. I have not heard Ron tell me he's done that. I've asked him a number of times. I think we're getting a little accusatory in the tone here. I personally don't love that language. And so similarly, the project designers revisited their measurement and their conclusion. So that's fine. I think it's important though for Aaron and Chris, this paragraph have a sentence start with Ron Gaynor, the town engineer, has identified through a series of calculations that this lot or this project is due 24 houses. However, then you can have the first sentence of the paragraph is then fine. However, the project sponsors did their own, and they came up with 25, and that's an objective assessment. This is not again. Of course, if I was Ulysses and I was spending all this money, I would write it the same exact way he did. But since it's our document, I would like to write in a more balanced way because it makes it sound like Ron did something wrong, and I don't know if that's been asserted yet. Certainly not proven to me. Okay.
Neil, I just want to clarify on that response 224. I'm seeing a sentence that says both consultants, meaning both Mr. Gaynor and us, and we, both consultants overstated the area of wetlands within the OSO district. I think Glenn could speak to that, but I think he found an error that we all made. That was what the comment was. We all made the same mistake.
Okay, I don't know. I assume the consultants referring to AKRF. I don't know who they were referring to. It just says consultants.
No, it's how we wrote the response. Unless there's another sentence I'm missing, but I'm seeing a sentence that says both consultants.
I'm sorry, I did write that response. It wasn't intended to be accusatory. It was intended to point out that we both made a mistake. We both overstated the wetlands. I mean, I don't mind changing it if you want to make it softer, but I think the position is that, and Ron just talked about that a couple of minutes ago, we have a difference in the way we approach the calculation, and we think that was to our detriment.
Ron, you want to say anything here?
Again, as I touched on earlier, acknowledge what their position is. These calculations go back some years, and we've always been willing to revisit the calc. And that's I think what the intent of this text should state. Because once we get through the secret process, we'll go through this issue one last time, and then we'll come to some clear determination.
I'm retaining it as long as it begins with a sentence and says, Ron Gaynor or the town engineers developed an assessment that says it's 24 houses. We're avoiding that entirely. We need to assert that there's a difference of opinion at the calculation.
Right.
Okay, let's keep going. Page 21. Your response to Ron's point about lot size, which has been mentioned by every board member tonight, I think all but one maybe. You mentioned in here a lot about, you basically have said, quote, in this response 2.33, you're quoting the code. Conservation subdivisions may include a variety of lot size ranging from large farm to estate lots or estate lots to small hamlet sized lots. And then the sentence after it says the project sponsor decide that incorporating large farm, blah, 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 will be contrary. So you address why you don't want the large, but you don't address why you don't want the quote, small hamlet sized lots, which of course you could do. You could have a cul-de-sac that is 4 townhouses put together, which would be more in keeping with this notion. You've chosen not to go that route. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. Meaning a sentence would be incorporated. The project sponsor decided to incorporate large or farm or estate lots would be contrary to the two purposes of clustering. And probably something like, and the project sponsor has chosen not to consider small hamlet sized lots. That's factual. And that's, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I'm going to not do one thing in the code, but I don't want to talk about the other thing the code suggests. So that would be a comment I'd like to add there. AKRF, is that cool or clear?
It is.
Okay. Next one, page 45. This is tied to Kim's point earlier about the road. I'm going into paragraph, I'm in response 2.85. The second paragraph of 2.85, the paragraph that starts with the NISDOT applies significant. You with me, Steve?
No, I'm still getting there.
Okay, let me know.
2.85.
Yes. Page 45.
Yeah, I'm working on a version on my phone that has no page numbers. That's why I keep asking for response numbers. Okay, response 2.85. I'm there.
All right, Jason. Ulysses, get this guy a laptop. Come on. All right. So in the sentence it says, ultimately, the project sponsor is confident. Blah blah blah. Why are we including a perspective opinion? I think that is an unnecessary and again gratuitous remark. That you're confident is not a point of fact. That is a point of just unnecessary conjecture, and I don't think it's appropriate for a document like this. I would strike the whole sentence. That you can get in the mind of the state DOT is shocking because I can't. I work with her and him on the MTA board. So let's strike that sentence, please. Okay. 3 more. Page 47. Similar point that I just made. This is response 2.88, Steve. I don't concur. I'm reacting to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th row. Quote, this statement suggests that NISDOT will grant access. Now I read the statement. I don't at all interpret that this statement suggests they'll grant access. All they said was coordination will be necessary between the department and the project sponsor. Of course it'll be necessary. Coordination is the core of having one agency touch another or one project touch another. I would not take that to suggest anything that they will grant access. So I would strike that whole sentence. Is that clear? Everyone capture that one?
I got it.
All right, cool. Page 97. Again, in its entirety, this is response 3bravo.25. 3bravo.25. This is about 2/3 the way down that paragraph. It states, it starts with Omer corridor in its entirety. This is, sorry. In fact, the design developed since 2014 follows this guidance from the creek, wetlands, Omer pond corridor in its entirety. I would get rid of the in its entirety. I don't think that's actually exactly true. And then again, you use the same phrase again on the next page in its entirety.
Wait a minute, where was the first one? I just got there. That was a long way to go.
Sorry, dude. I seriously, I think you brought a knife to a gunfight. You need to bring you need to bring all these printouts, dude.
Hey,
3B, I'm doing it again.
I'm on one phone with the Zoom and another phone with the file.
We're doing it. All right. This is 3B25. It is the sentence that says, in fact, the design developed since 2014 follows this guidance, preserving the creek, wetlands, Omer pond corridor in its entirety. I would strike in its entirety.
What paragraph are we in? It's a long response.
All right. Does anyone want to help Steve out here?
No, it's the first paragraph, Steve. It's the
First paragraph.
All right, we're taking
Two-thirds of the
note.
way down. 2014.
Starts with in fact.
Yeah.
Which was actually struck.
Oh, we struck the in fact. Okay, yeah.
I said I want in its entirety gone. I don't want in its entirety.
Yes. It's a factual statement.
It is?
Yeah, that's a factual statement.
We're making is that, in fact, the whole point we're making is that this board keeps telling you that having the houses in that area does impede possibly the corridor, and you mitigated it.
Oh, okay. You're talking about corridor. Well, okay. All right. Well, then that's a little difference of opinion, but we do absolutely preserve the entire creek, wetlands, the creek, the wetlands, and Omar Pond in its entirety. There's no question about that. I guess it's how you want to define the width of the corridor.
What I'm asking you, I'm asking you to strike in its entirety from that paragraph, and 2 paragraphs hence you use the exact same language in its entirety. So those are my comments specific on the FEIS. Now, as far as the project. So I think I've alluded to these points before, and all my fellow board members have made them. I think the southern portion of the pond is still, I think, has one too many houses on it for purposes of preserving the corridor through the lower end of the pond and across, going from east to west. I know my colleague talked about the 11 o'clock and the 3 o'clock houses. To me, actually, the one that's most challenging is the 9 o'clock house. Meaning the one that's to the furthest west, due west one. And then the second one is, as we brought up the point around uniformity, you intentionally did not look at the other modes that the conservation subdivision talks about, or at least the hamlet. You did not look at the farm size ones, nor did you look at the hamlet size ones. So I think that does lead to a situation where you do have a uniformity, and that is not necessarily in keeping with the conservation subdivision. I'm not suggesting you need to make a bunch of townhouses now, because I'm not sure that actually is exactly what your plan is, but I think there is clearly a sentiment from this board over and over again that the uniformity is not in keeping with the conservation subdivision. Now, that said, we've given you a lot of commentary and there's edits to be made. And I'm pretty sure that no board member here is going to, maybe one, but I don't think I could even get a motion in a second to vote on the acceptance tonight. At least that's my sense. I can take a straw poll or we can actually try it, but I don't think we can get that tonight, given I think you've heard a number of people say they want to see the edits made. That said, more importantly for you as a project, you've heard some commentary from the board about what I would consider them minor changes that need to be done. Well, you may not feel they're minor, but changes made to get this board feeling more comfortable about the plan. So I'd like to suggest you take the edits that AKRF has made. We get a clean copy of this board that's clearly read the document and clearly is understanding. I hope communicate clearly how they feel about the secret situation. And that's enough input, I think, for you guys, for us to get back together in January to get us to an acceptance of the FEIS. That's my view at this point. I would like to ask I'm happy to poll the board members about whether they're willing to accept the document this evening.
Let me make
Because
one
I don't think it's
comment.
really necessary to do that. Neil, I don't think it's necessary. This was a very productive discussion. And I mean that in the sense that, no one likes to take a lot of criticism, but nevertheless, it was constructive. And there are things that we can work on and we can work on together. And all I would suggest is this, that, we got comments yesterday afternoon at 4 o'clock and Steve worked into the night trying to respond as quickly as possible. What I would like to have, and we got it from the board, you polled them, we got their comments. We have now turned around more comments that AKRF has. Instead of waiting until if it's now December 15th. If we get,
I don't want to get into a pissing contest about this. It's very clear from the AKRF guys that they've given you the tonal comments for months on. I just don't want to get in the middle of it. I've tried very hard to get them to work with you. I've heard feel like I'm a school principal. I've heard their version of it. I'm hearing yours. The reality is it's not done enough where it needs to get done. And I'm not blaming. This is where we are. And this is the craziness of this process where you guys author a document that's for us. That's the crazy part.
you know what? I'm with you 1,000%. The only thing is the endless cycle of comments and going back and forth. I'm trying, just like you, once and for all. I think we now have it. I'm
trying to. They gave you, as I understand, several hundred comments, whatever it was. Right at a month ago, I said, you three all get together, get in a room, figure it out. And then they came back when we talked, they said there were still 300 of those comments not made. So what am I to do? I said, was it 2 or was it 700? They said it's right in the middle. So that were not yet made. So I don't know what to tell you. They're itemizing the things that you haven't done and they're not all being done. And as Kim and Laura both articulately said, they don't want to make a judgment on this thing until AKRF says it's all done. And so given what that said, plus the fact that we have not seen it, even though Steve worked it, and thank you, Steve, for that. And you've got additional comments tonight. I think that is an appropriate place for us to call it a night. And I promise you, well, I can't promise you, I will implore AKRF to give you their remarks as soon as you turn it and turn it as fast as can. Obviously, we're going to Christmas and New Year's holiday and everyone's got to take a break. Even the volunteers of this planning board got to take a break.
All right, Neil, if I can respond to one thing, I just want to let you know that we've already made the changes from the memo that you received today. I was working with Chris and Aaron yesterday. In fact, Chris and I were emailing each other into the night. The last email I got from Chris was at 2:14 a.m. I worked till 4 a.m. last night, and then we worked again today, and I was on the phone for a long time with both of them, either together or individually. Chris and I were on the phone this evening until 6:30 p.m. hashing out things, or a couple sentences that I wanted to make a case for keeping, or phrases, and we hashed it out. But we've already made all the changes.
Steve, what I'm saying is the tone of the board, you heard everyone. Yeah. And I really don't want to keep rehashing this. I'm sorry you worked so hard. The board is not comfortable voting on it until they see it done.
We agree.
I know, but Steve is, I understand Steve worked hard. If I went and complained to my clients about how hard I worked, they'd say, keep working. So I don't know what to do.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not arguing for you voting on it tonight. I'm letting you know that we have indeed been working together.
Yes.
And we have, and also I can tell you that we've been very responsive. I don't know, I'm confused by the comment about there are hundreds of comments, because we have responded to every single comment that we have gotten.
Your colleague Rick just said to you that he'd like to have more advanced notice of the comments. So I don't know what to do with that, except to say, we are going to see you here if you'd like at the next board meeting. You have the comments from AKRF, you have the comments from the board. If you get it to us at the appropriate time, the board will have the chance to then weigh in and then accept this document the next session. It also gives you a chance, time to think about, from a project perspective, hint, some of the things the board has said to you about what they would do to find the project more satisfying from an environmental perspective. And that's an opportunity you have to think about that in the interim.
Okay. No, my only point was that we are working together.
All right.
Can I suggest one? I'm sorry. Can I just suggest that when we did get a copy of we got a red line Word document at 6:30 tonight that responds to our memo from today. There's additional comments that the board has tonight. I think what you would want to look at is a similar track change Word file. I think that would help the board tremendously. It helped us a lot in expediting our review the last time around. So that's what I would recommend, that they take the comments from tonight, add it to what we already got, send it back in, and the board can review it.
If you guys need to figure out a more iterative schedule between AKRF and we, go for it.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you all. All right, any other comments, board members? All right, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Kim. Dennis, second. Good evening. Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Good night.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Yep.